I don't know how my battery is here.
Can you sound better? Your battery's on.
Okay, so I guess we'll get started here.
Can everybody hear him okay?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Try to speak a little bit louder too. First step, what I do in all my aquariums. This is a product called Bacter 100 by ADA. Essentially what this is, it's approximately 100 different types of beneficial bacteria for your aquarium in a dormant state. It'll help you jumpstart your aquarium with the beneficial bacteria. And I just sprinkle this along the bottom, kind of liberally, I guess, and this will be good for your plants and your substrate here. So this is just one simple quick step at the beginning. It's not super necessary, you know, it's not important, but if you have the tools and resources to make the end result as good as possible, then by all means use it. It's not super expensive, although it's not easy to get either. Well, I guess it's easy to get if you know the right people or know where to order online. Aquaforce Aquarium out of San Francisco, they have this on their online website, so that's one place you can get it. And you can always ask me and I'll send you some links as well. Okay, so
Dead spots in the deeper substrate?
Brian? I'm not so sure on that actually.
What was the question?
Will prevent dead spots in the deeper substrate?
Will it prevent dead spots in the...
No. All it does is increase the amount of time, or lessen the amount of time it takes for your tank to establish, both in the water column and underneath the substrate. As far as anaerobic conditions, and yeah, it has no effect on that. There is, with Aquasoil, this new one, they've been trying to alleviate some of those issues. Again, it's not as bad as it was 10 years ago. So not many people have that problem anymore with Aquasoil. If you're going into some other inert substrate, you might have some issues.
Okay, what I'm doing here is just clearing out a small space so that you can't see it from the front and the sides. Just one small aesthetic thing that you can do. So I clear out the space here so you can't see these little particles once you put your substrate in. So let's get some substrate in here. To start off, I'm just going to go with a thin layer before I actually plan out my layout. And then once I kind of have a vision of what I want to do, then we'll be adding more. And you'll notice that I'm pouring the soil down the front and down the sides, again to make sure that once it's filled with substrate, that all you see from the front and the sides is the soil. One thing that a lot of scapers like to do is use lava rock or some kind of filler substrate to create some height without having to use Aquasoil for that height. And if you do that, like a layer of crushed lava rock or something, if you do that, then you definitely want to do what I did at the beginning, where you clear out the space from the front so you can't see anything else besides the soil. This is a neat little tool. It's not really necessary, like I said, it's just a small thing where we can move the substrate around, get a nice even flat surface at first, even things out a little bit.
You don't have to rinse the Aquasoil first?
No, you do not want to rinse the Aquasoil first. Basically, it's got all the nutrients and stuff that you need in there, so you don't want to wash it out. And also, it's gonna kind of create it like a muddy situation for you, which is not clean and not nice at all. Because Aquasoil literally is just soil balled up into little gravel-sized balls. But at the end of the day, you know, with a little bit of pressure, it's still just soil. So okay, I've got a nice thin layer here, and then once I decide what the final picture is going to look like, then I can move the soil around a little bit and add some more to create the depth that I'm looking for, because eventually I will be sloping it, like I said earlier, sloping it from the bottom to the back like this. So for the first Aquascape, what I'm thinking is I have these 3 pieces. This is spiderwood or red moor root. I had found these 3 pieces at my local shop. This is actually a very common type of wood that you'll see in a pet store. Although these have been used in an aquarium before and have been aged, so they don't look like what you see in the pet store, because in the pet store they'll be a very light brown, but after they've been in water for a while they'll darken like this. So if you look up spiderwood, you'll see pieces like this, and I think it's really nice. Got a lot of nice texture and shape to it, which is one of the things I was telling you to look for, right? And also consistent color. Though if you find some old pieces like this that have been used before and you find some new pieces, you also have the knowledge that eventually those new pieces will age and turn this same color here. So if you know both pieces are spiderwood, even though at that moment they look different, they will eventually, color up and darken to this same thing here. And I saw that these pieces go really well together. So I was thinking maybe on this first layout to have kind of like a centralized structure, which, yeah, I know kind of goes against the 2/3 thing, but you'll find that once the branches come out, where they end will be right about here and right about here. So let's do that. I'm just kind of just look at it and move it around at different angles and shapes. For me, it's very easy to recognize when it's in the right spot. With other people, it takes a little bit of practice, so don't get frustrated if at first they don't look too great. But so the way I've laid it out here, you can kind of see how everything comes out from a single source right here in the middle. They kind of all radiate out, and the angles as well. So nothing is at really like a 90 degree. This one is actually 45 degrees, and they all kind of space out like this. Also notice the spacing of these branches. It's not like 1, 2, 3 like a fan, but you have like a group here and then a group here as well, but this group isn't as tightly close together. They kind of spread out a little bit. So it's that irregular spacing that I mentioned above. And there's also this empty negative space area here as well. And if you look, the way I'm holding it, this is probably give or take the way I'm going to arrange the wood. We have a triangle right here as well, and I just noticed it. So like I said, these things kind of just manifest themselves and show up without really consciously trying. But if they don't, and something seems off about your layout, then maybe you can try and consciously create these angles and triangles. So this one seems like long, skinny, and branchy out in this way, and this one's kind of short and stubby. So to kind of balance that out, this is long, skinny, and branchy as well. So I'm thinking maybe I can try and place this here, something like that. I'm going to have a look from the front. Oops, or maybe not. Yeah, actually, I like this. So I'm going to keep this in mind because I actually don't want it this low. I want some substrate under it so that it sits a little bit higher like this. And also, when I create a mound here, they'll be angled out a little more like this. So this is kind of like the end result I'm looking for. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to add some substrate now. And I will be incorporating some rock into this as well. Funny story about that rock. It's also kind of incidental on how I came across it. Just going about my day and finding the inspiration there because I had noticed that I liked the shape and the texture of these rocks. And surprisingly, I found these rocks on railroad tracks. I think they call it riprap or something like that. It's got a nice dark gray color, and you'll see that what I brought with me, I have a nice range in sizes, which I think is a very important point that I'm going to emphasize again. So maybe something here. And another thing is, since I'm using rocks today, it's pretty nice. This wood has been out of water a long time and it's going to float. So, being conscious of that, I'm going to place the rocks in such a way that it will hold the wood down and not let it float up, so that whenever whoever comes home with this tank can fill it with water, and I can hopefully be confident that it won't float up on you. So from here, I'm kind of already envisioning where I want to put certain plants. So I have this little empty area back here where I'm going to put a tall plant, and maybe some mid-range height right around here and right up against the wood, and then some lower height plants in the front. I'm going to add a little bit more soil so that we have some depth to plant into, because right now we're looking at maybe ½ inch, which is not very deep for soil for planting. And burying the wood in this substrate like this will also play a small role in keeping it down, albeit it's not a very sound way to hold it down by any means, but it does help a little bit. Yes, absolutely. This is really, more of like an accessory thing if you want to have a complete set of tools. I have one, and I honestly don't use it that much. I really just use my hands because it's more flexible and easier to get into tight spots. But it does keep your hands a little cleaner, and that's really the only thing. You don't really need it. I'm going to look at some rocks and see if I can So I have a couple large ones here. So like I said, I literally just went down some railroad tracks, and what they fill in the railroad tracks with is this stuff, and I thought it looks really nice. And it's free also. All you got to do is go down to your local railroad track and you can find stuff like this. I think it's amazing. So this is what I had picked out for my large size ones. Basically just take this home and scrub it off with a toothbrush or something that you're not using. So you can kind of see how I have like a mound shape kind of a flow going on with everything coming out from the middle. Not too different from my big 90 centimeter that I showed you guys over and over again earlier. So you can also apply, some Iwagumi kind of ideas behind this too. This being like the biggest stone that we have, and it's got a lot of nice color and texture. See if I can place this somewhere where we can highlight that. Maybe coming down the front like this. Too close. So I kind of like it here. Not only that, it's really holding this wood down too. I've mentioned earlier about keeping space for you to clean. With the end result in mind, I'm going to have plants back here so you won't see the glass or the algae on the glass. And having the plant here, algae might not even grow there. So I don't necessarily need to get my hand in this area. And you can kind of see how the tips of these rocks are pointed outwards, again giving you a sense of direction, sense of flow where things are going. Now you see earlier I told you to avoid like flat sections like this. You can recognize, you don't necessarily have to put this back into your selection bin or whatever. We can still use this rock because I find that this front section has a sense of direction and it has some nice shape and texture to it. And there's a flat section here, but I'm probably going to bury it in the soil, so really what you're going to see is like this much of it. This is the other thing to help you create like a natural look, is to partially bury your stones. Kind of like that. Here's another square and flat section, but if you turn this around, you have this nice point, some nice texture. So I could use this in this manner and avoid this area being seen. I'm not too keen on the amount of space that's available up front there. And the other important thing is, I know you spent money on all these rocks and wood that you bring home. You don't necessarily have to use every single piece, and you'll come to recognize that even though I did like this piece when I picked it up off the table, it didn't really go anywhere, so I'm not going to use it. And it's hard for people to overcome that. It was really hard for me, and it's still hard for me to overcome the fact that I spent the money on this. I thought it would look nice in my tank. You try it out in like different areas and it just didn't work out, so just put it back. Sometimes the pieces just don't fit, and you gotta let it go. I'm gonna put this one up here. After I plant it, you might not see it too well, but this is gonna help keep this piece of wood down, hopefully. Press it a little bit. The plant I'm going to use back here is Java Fern, so I won't have to actually plant it in here. So I don't need this soil space because it's just going to sit on top of the soil. You know what? Maybe I can use it after all to hold this other piece down. That doesn't look too bad either. I'm going to shift things around a little bit to make sure they don't go out of place, because I do have to remember that this is going to be sitting in a car sooner or later, so I don't want things shifting too much. That is not bad. So I've got my big main pieces in. I'm going to select some medium-sized pieces to kind of transition. I'm looking at this one. It's very triangular indeed, but it's also very flat on all sides. So this would be an example of something that although it meets one of the criteria. There's several others that it doesn't meet and probably won't be used in an area that it'll be visible. Though it does have its place, maybe we can use this to hold the wood down or something. And I'm going to bring these smaller pieces also, so I don't have to walk back there again. Okay, so right off the bat what I see is I have 2, right? So it's even number, and let me show you what 4 pieces together might look like and how that's kind of okay from the front, I guess, but from where I'm seeing it, it's really square and even. Not square, I guess it's more of a diamond. But instead, if we do this, here's another nice point and triangle. Put this right between here. And I could do that, but instead, bury it a little bit and get a little bit of banking up around it. I think that looks much nicer from the front. Put some space there, so something like that. And you'll see that when you start bringing pieces together, sometimes they kind of fit like puzzle pieces, like this. This actually works out very well. Got a little bit of a flat surface in the front, so maybe I'll try it from here. And that's going to help hold this wood down from floating. Okay, so I've got some medium pieces in there. When you put that slope in your substrate, you don't want it to be too high because water movement and other factors can kind of like dissipate the slope over time. So don't bank it up too steep, because even as I'm moving things around now, the slope is kind of like diminishing. That's something to keep in mind. What I'm seeing from the front here is I have this area right here that could use a little bit of filling up. Maybe not necessarily use some rocks, but I think this is a nice example of where I could place some plants. But in this particular spot there's no area for soil, so a plant like a Nubius or Java fern would work well here. It's also small, so we can kind of keep it short here from growing up and covering all this nice wood. So I'm going to keep in mind that this is a good place for some Anubias. And lastly, what I'm going to do is use the very small fine pieces. So like I said before, we could have stopped here and it would be okay, but it's the details that really make or break some aquascapes. So let me show you here the size of the stones that I'm using here, and what I like to do is use it as a transition from areas with no stone to the medium-sized stones here in the front, and just very lightly and naturally sprinkle them like this. These will move over time, but that's okay. That's, I guess, another aspect to make it look natural. And I'm just grabbing handfuls and kind of doing this with it. In clusters too. I do it in clusters, and I kind of keep them away from each other, space them out in irregular fashion. Let's see where else would be good. And try not to overdo it as well. I mean, there's some moderation involved here. And I'm going to keep this little area maybe for a plant or two right here. I think that's pretty nice. Maybe we can do something, find a branch or two for this area. It's a little open. It is okay to use different types of wood. So what I'm about to do is grab a piece or two of manzanita to stick in here. It's okay, you know, as long as the grain and the texture is not too far off. So you can see that the color here is, you know, not too different. And this, I like this piece. So this is another example of like a nice flow where it's very smooth. Even though the branch itself is jagged, the general line that you create here is very smooth and transitional. And also, you see how these two branches are not equal lengths. This one's about a third the length of this one, it just so happens, and it looks, you know, nice and natural that way. Another thing you can do, which is kind of important to me actually, is I'll spray some water on my wood and my rocks so I know what it'll look like underwater, because once I fill this tank up with water, it's not going to be light gray like this. It's actually going to be pretty dark, right? So that's one thing to recognize. Or another point is that two pieces of wood may look similar color right now, but once they're both wet, are they still you know, close enough? Just in my experience, it won't be too far off, so we can use this piece. This is a little bit different from manzanita that you'll see in a store because it has been in water for a while too, so this one has also darkened. Let's see where I want to put this. I like to have branches come out of the water too. I think it's got a nice feel and look to it, but this one's not really working out. I don't like it too much. See, what I'm doing is I'm putting it in the area where everything's coming from, and I'm kind of moving it around. Like I said, when I look at things and I move them around, they kind of click into place, and once I see that click into place, I know, you know, where I want it to be. But right now I feel like I should start putting some plants in and then go from there and see if I want to fill up that area. Maybe it'll look okay without excuse me, anything there. So I'll leave these aside for now and go back to them. So at this point I'm pretty happy with the layout. Let's start throwing some plants in there and see how everything looks. So I like to keep something I can mist the tank with. Usually I have this like pump spray thing, but for travel, you know, this is just fine. So I'm going to start moistening everything and start thinking about where I want to put some plants, what kind of species. I did forget one thing, so ideally I would have used some moss on some of these branches. They're kind of all in place now, so it's hard. Well, it's not hard. It's a little hard. Inconvenient. It's inconvenient to pull everything back out and tie some moss to it, right? So that's one thing that I should have thought about, and I usually do, but I kind of forgot just now. So where that would have came in is before I had put more substrate in here earlier, when I just had the three pieces in my hand moving them around. I could have thought about where I wanted to tie the moss. So to kind of solve that problem, what we'll do is I'll find a couple single branches that I can throw out here and there with moss on them, and also demonstrate for you guys how I tie moss onto branches. So that's about the level of wetness or moistness that you want. In a little bit here, you're going to see that the soil is going to soak up. A lot of this moisture is going to dry back up a little bit, but that's okay. We'll just spray some more. And the wood is soaking it up quite a bit too. The main piece here I see I'm going to be using is this Java fern here. And I typically use Java fern as a background plant. It's really good to hide the rhizomes, this ugly section here, and it's tall enough. I mean, potentially it can grow, very tall if you're using the regular Java fern. So it's tall enough to use as a background plant, and you'll notice that my style is to use Java fern in the back of my tanks as a background plant. Let me create some space for it. I think that's pretty good. Have some Anubias over here. This is Nana Petite. It's a very small Anubias. And when you have your plants laid out like this, you want to mist them too. But usually, I would probably be scaping with these in a bucket of water, so I don't have to go back and forth and spray them all the time. So I think this cluster would look nice in the little area that I had pointed out earlier right here. And I don't really have to plant it. I can just kind of jam it in there and it'll hold itself into place. Let's see, there's a little hole here. I can put another piece. I have some pieces here that have bigger leaves. It's another species of Anubias. I think it might work well there, so let's take a look. This one actually has a really nice flower on it too. It looks a little bit better pointing outwards, and eventually the leaves will straighten themselves out when they try to grow up towards the light. But I really wanted to just kind of fill in this space. Here's a couple more of the petite variety. You can also, if you don't have a place that you can kind of like jam it into a crevice, you can super glue or tie it to a rock to keep it from floating around, or to keep it where you want it. Remember to keep everything nice and wet and moist. Okay, so there's a lot of emptiness here that I'd like to address. And take a look at what plants I have that might be of good height there. And I think Blixa japonica is a nice plant that could go there. This plant in my tank stayed only about this tall, 4 inches or so. I've seen it much taller. So it's not necessarily the species, but even the conditions that they're grown in will dictate their height as well. And like I said, know about your plants and how to propagate them. So as they grow, they'll start to bud off like this. So right now this looks like one single piece, but you can actually split them here and have two. From shipping, the tips are a little bit dried off. I think this plant will be okay though. So here's the benefit of using pin sets. I'm going to grab these roots and ball them up a little bit. And grab them like this, place them into the soil. And you see when I probably just place my finger right here at the base and then pull out the pin sets, and it'll stay in place right there. There's a slightly smaller one I'm going to put in front of it so that it doesn't really cover it. And after you pull the pin sets out, you can kind of like push the soil around the roots. Okay, so I have another tall one here. I'll probably use on maybe here. It'll grow higher and fill that space out. And the soil has already soaked up a lot of the water, so I'm going to have to wet it again to get it to stick into place. You can see in the front it's already kind of dried up. A couple small ones I'm going to use up here. Maybe a small one in the front here. See, it's kind of dried, the soil is kind of dried up, so it wanted to come up, as you saw just now. Maybe another one right here. See how after I moistened it, it kind of stayed in place, and then you do this to kind of compress the soil around the roots. I had 2. I like to do things in 3. Just a personal preference, and you'll find that it ends up looking more natural and better. Not only did I place them in 3, but I placed them in a triangle orientation if you look at it from above. Okay, so I've used up all the Blixa. There's an area here that's kind of empty, so I'm going to see what I can do about that area. Okay, this is a plant called Hygrophila pinnatifida. What I like about this plant is the shape of the leaves, and also that it can either grow planted into soil, or it can grow on top of rocks and stuff, and it'll kind of anchor itself. I have this piece that's a little bit tall, so I can place it, I think, somewhere around this area to fill up that space. So that's what I'll do there. And actually I'll add a little bit more soil to that area. Thanks. this one's kind of tall. I'm going to place this one back here. Maybe another one here. So I think this is pretty near completion now. I'm going to place a couple small plants in the front, some short foreground plants, and what I'm thinking is
Power cycle.
okay.
Speak up.
Hello?
No, it's not. It's not on. Let's try.
Hello? Okay, good, much better. Okay, so just a couple more plants around here. I see little divots and areas where I can plant areas here. So there's like a small triangle here where a plant would look very nice right there. So this is where this one is going. And I'm going to find a couple more areas like that. Here's one. See, there's these little natural pockets that I was mentioning. This is a low-growing foreground plant. Well, in a nano tank, you might even consider this as a mid-ground plant. Anything up to like 20 gallons, this might be considered a mid-ground plant. But if you keep it trimmed, so like on this one, the roots are all the way down here and it's grown to 4 inches, but a lot of people will keep it trimmed low. The more you trim it, the bushier it'll get. So I can break that off here and make it a little bit shorter so I can place it in the foreground.
What is the name of it?
It's Starogine repens, or some people say Starogine. I'd spell it out, but it's a very long word. It's very easy to find, very common plant, and a quick Google will show you some results. Just remember the part repens, R-E-P-E-N-S. So people will abbreviate it as S repens. I think a little bit back here would look good too. So I'm going to do that, find a couple taller pieces to put back here so that you can actually see them. Like these are about 2 or 3 inches tall. Alright, I think that should do it for this one. And yeah, as the plants grow a little bit more and mature a little bit more, everything's gonna seem more complete and filled out. Usually, after planting a tank with new plants, well, these aren't necessarily new. What am I trying to say here? When you first complete an aquascape, it's gonna look something not complete, but after about a month of growth, it'll really be more unified. I think the moss demonstration I'll do on the next tank. There is a little bit of a moss that's pretty much dried up. I mean, I'm sure this moss has been out of water for months, but sometimes it will grow. Moss is very resilient and hardy, so it wouldn't surprise me if this moss would start growing again. It is green still, but we'll see. Let me know, guys, whoever takes this home. But I think that should do it for this one. Clean up the front a little bit so it's more visible. Also, when you saw me pouring the soil earlier, you could see there was like a brown cloud of dust. Doing this, cleaning the front of the glass, it's gonna help keep that off the glass when you fill the tank, because you will see like a thin brown layer, something like this, once you fill it with water if you don't wipe it down. And you replant this guy. My hand hit it. It's a little delicate right now. Okay, let's call it a day on this one. Thank you.
And what would you as far as escape category, what would you classify this tank as?
As escape category, I would definitely call this Ryoboku. I mean, classing is nice to kind of categorize, but you know, it's really free form. You whatever you feel like looks nice, just do whatever you think looks good, and don't worry about what this would be considered as category-wise. Yeah, so to ship this or to fill this up, you know, I would put the plastic bags and fill it very slowly. Try and keep water movement to a minimum. Also, to send this off, I'm going to cover this with plastic to keep all the moisture in and keep the plants from dying. All right, so let's get started on the next one.